Yeah, no, I'm not kidding when I say that they need to tread with caution, because if Shinx is A, not in Pokemon Legends ZA, and B, doesn't receive a Mega Evolution, oh boy, somebody's neck is getting wrong. So, for some astronomical reason, Shinx not only did not receive a Mega Evolution, but didn't even make it into Legends ZA. So, unfortunately for anybody at Game Freak or Pokemon Company, I have a promise that I have to upkeep. Somebody is getting strangled. You will not know who, you will not know when, but keep eyes in the back of your head and keep your windows locked. Back in 2021, we were not shocked in the slightest over receiving news in regards to the 4th gen remakes. We were in something of a more predictable cycle even during the Switch 1 era. The most shocking thing about that piece of news was the fact that it wasn't developed by Game Freak, because Game Freak was allegedly working on something else. Enter Pokemon Legends Arceus, a complete shift to the mainline series that not a single soul, me specifically, could not have predicted. Despite how it looked at first glance, it was something completely new, something extremely different. A title that really went out of its way to challenge and change series conventions and perceptions built up to that point. Upon release, this game came out to surprisingly positive reception. Part of me believes that this is because it was coming so soon after the Gen 4 remakes, which a lot of people were just generally not happy about. So to have something so new and so different so immediately after felt like a true breath of fresh air. And then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out and people were like, yep, nope, that's our Pokemon Company. That's the Game Freak we know. I think one of the biggest frustrations people had about Scarlet and Violet was the fact that it felt almost nothing like Legends Arceus. While plenty of people can agree that Legends Arceus looked and felt unfinished, it felt like we had something to really look forward to in terms of the future of Pokemon with that. There were just so many things from that title that we wanted to see transferred over and utilized more properly in a more fleshed out generational title. Scarlet and Violet simply was never going to be that. Considering the fact that it was developed around the same time as Legends Arceus by a completely different faction of Game Freak, yeah, it was never going to have those elements. Which was really unfortunate because as much potential as Scarlet and Violet had, it was simply squandered and really showcased a lot of the problems that are happening internally with Pokemon Company and Game Freak when it comes to the development cycles of these games. So, afterwards, a lot of people felt really tired and really burnt on Pokemon after Scarlet and Violet. Whatever came next afterwards had to really change the game. About 2 years ago at this point, we were waiting for that inevitable next Pokemon Presents. We knew two things for certain. That one, we really did not want another mainline title whatsoever if we could help it. Just the general idea of a major Pokemon title releasing at the end of 2024 was maddening. For the last couple of years at that point, every single time we'd receive that first trailer, it would always look super unfinished, super unready to go, and we'd be receiving the game within that same year. And there was just no way anybody would be able to breathe properly if we went 4 for 4 on that. The other thing that we knew for certain was that we were not going to be receiving a mainline generational title. Generation 9 just came out, and there's no way in hell we could be receiving the Gen 5 remakes, not yet. So, what could this possibly be? And that is where we got our first teaser for Pokemon Legends ZA. All we got was that simple teaser, but everybody was genuinely shocked out of their minds that we'd be receiving another Legends title this soon. But nobody was really mad about that. In fact, a lot of people were really excited. This confirmed that we were going to get yet another convention-changing game in the mainline series. This confirmed that we had more like this to look forward to. And the craziest part about all of this was that we didn't even see a glimpse of this game for a full year. All we had to go off of for that complete silent year of Pokemon was speculation and leaks if you really wanted to look into it. When we did finally get that first glimpse of the game, it came out to pretty mixed reception. Every trailer we received, a lot of people felt like the game was still missing something that they weren't showcasing for whatever reason. They were wondering and worried about the fact that the game took place in one city, Lumiose. There was a lot of worry and disdain growing around this game the closer we got to it. Even with the first-hand experience previews that we got from journalists and other YouTubers, people still weren't quite trusting of this game yet. Makes sense though, right? I mean, after something like Scarlet and Violet, how could they just blindly trust something like this? They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what they were buying into. And for $70, they really wanted to know what they were buying into. And so, after a full year-plus wait, we finally received the game. At the time of the beginning of this recording, because Shinx knows it's going to take me a good couple days to fully get through this, the game has been out for about 2 weeks, and I have beaten it twice now. But of course, this is nothing new. This is pretty standard procedure. I've done this for every mainline title since the Gen 4 remakes. Really helps me get my thoughts together on everything, you know? But this time in particular, I felt it was even more important to do something like that because this is, by and far, the most controversial Pokemon game, and it's not close. I predicted this was going to happen, but not to this degree. But it's not necessarily unwarranted controversy. There has been a bubbling happening for a very long time now under the surface when it comes to these games. And with Legend ZA, that bubbling has erupted. Just absolute flames. Just everywhere. So, with all of that being said, is this game an upset? Did it hope to match up to its predecessor and even succeed in becoming more? Or did it fall completely flat? Once again, never meeting the expectations of what the series could be. I'm Soul Story Mode, and this is my official review of Pokemon Legend ZA. Oh my god, I did not mean for that interlude to be so long. I'm so sorry. I'm putting timestamps down there, I promise you. Fair warning, this is not going to be a spoiler-free review. I'm going to be talking about any and all of my feelings regarding this game in every aspect that I can think of. So, if you haven't finished the game for yourself, be wary. Be very cautious. That being said, anyone that knows me knows that I like to keep it relatively simple over here. I've done my best to organize my likes and my dislikes. This time though, I've organized them by category, so we're gonna go through my likes in each category, and then we're gonna set it up to go through my dislikes in each category. Alright, with all that being said, why don't you go ahead, get cozy, grab a nice cool glass of Coca-Cola, and maybe, you're probably hungry. It might be around dinner time by the time you're watching this. Why don't you go ahead, get your Houndoom steak ready with some mayonnaise on the side to dip that in while I give you my review on Pokemon Legend ZA. First things first, we're going to start with my positives. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the visuals and sounds first. First thing I absolutely have to acknowledge is that the models of the people in Pokemon are definitely a step up of where they've ever been before. Playing most Pokemon games prior to this, usually when it came to the models, at least for the people, I usually never had a problem with that. That was like the one thing that was usually guaranteed to get a little bit better. And of course, when it comes to character design throughout the Pokemon franchise, they usually find a way to cook one way or another. And this time around is absolutely no exception. And I'm not even just talking about the primary cast in this case. Most NPCs actually feel like they have a little bit of a unique look to them. Of course, I am sure that there are plenty of reutilized NPCs throughout the city, but I feel like I saw a lot less of that this time around. And even when you do see a reutilized NPC, there's a good chance they may even have a different skin tone, which is a very nice touch. I mean, come on, you guys know me. I think I would have pointed out much earlier than this if we would have had a black Nurse Joy in any of the games prior to this one. Again, for those who don't know, black guy, by the way, just pointing that out. Moving on. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how the models of the people turned out this time around as well. This time around though, you can also definitely tell that they're doing just a little bit more with the Pokemon as well. They're a bit more expressive than they used to be, more so than ever. Going into the camera app, you can make it so that these Pokemon are doing really specific expressions the way that you want them to so you can get good pictures with them. And that alone is really, really cool. It's really nice to just sit down on a bench every now and again and watch your Pokemon goof off with one another. It's really nice. In a similar vein, I feel like they've done a good job in touching up on general animations as well. It feels like any general character that's even remotely important has completely unique animations this time around, and that is such a nice thing to see. If I ever had to see the hop and how bounce animation, the thing that they do with their hands over and over again, I think I would have actually lost my mind. But I'm more than happy to see that we have more than that and that generic hair twirl thing that they used to do in previous games as well. A lot of the things that these characters do blatantly express their personalities in unique ways. Every time you get Naveen irritated, he does that little Arthur fist clench situation, and that's really funny. You've got characters like Jacinthe constantly tossing her massive hair back because she has so much of it that she always needs to get that sucker out of the way, and that makes a lot of sense. The simple gesture of somebody like LeBon switching up how she sits and showcasing her true personality, stuff like that goes a really long way. Even all of their intro animations, whenever they get into a battle with us or alongside us or whatever else, they all look and feel super unique from one another. And don't even get me started on all the different ways that they all use their Mega Rings. It's so much fun. So yeah, I can and will say with confidence that the animation has definitely taken a nice step up. And this also applies to the Pokemon as well. You could definitely tell that because we're not constantly switching in and out of a battlefield where the Pokemon have to like sit in place for battle, they really had to step up their game in that department. Which in turn, I think is a really nice thing because now we get to see situations like Pokemon perched up on street lamps and rooftops, or actually chowing down on an apple next to a vendor. Hell, even the difference between Pokemon that obviously can and can't swim is very nice to see. Obviously, you're gonna have Pokemon like Tepig utilizing that stupid floaty thing that they walk on, however that works. But every now and again, you'll come across an Eevee that's floating just fine without the aid. I don't know what it is about little stuff like that I just really appreciate, you know? I think battle animations have definitely seen a little bit of improvement as well. Maybe it's because everything moves so much faster, but it's so satisfying to land these moves nowadays. I love hitting a fat fly on an opponent. Moves like Close Combat actually looks how the description tells you. Signature moves like Water Shuriken look as accurate as it could possibly be. And in that specific case, when you Mega Evolve with Greninja, he uses the entire Water Shuriken that he is standing on as the attack. It completely changes it. And naturally, of course, the cutscene animations have been getting better and better with each entry. I simply wish that we had more of these more often throughout the course of these games because they do generally look really, really good. But yeah, overall, general animation, that's a plus from me. Also, something that I've noticed, maybe it's because we were coming off of Scarlet and Violet, but I feel like the coloring is actually really good this time around too. Things feel a lot more vibrant. Like, yeah, for the most part, we are surrounded by a lot of like grays and generally steely colors because we're in a city, but the coloring and hues on the people in Pokemon generally look just so much better. You could definitely tell that they're still trying to heavily lean into that like cartoony / anime style that they've always done, but really getting a lot of things down little by little as they go. Aside from that though, I gotta say, I am extremely pleased that I've had pretty much zero major malfunctions or frame drops with this game. And I was really praying that would be the case because I was playing on the Switch 2 edition, and if that version had any major issues, it would not be a very good look at all. But overall, I literally cannot think of a single instance where I've even seen a frame drop, like anything of the sort. It ran consistently stable throughout both of my playthroughs. And I can't say much about it because I haven't played the Switch 1 version, but all of the reports I've gotten from friends who have been playing on the Switch 1 version have also said that it's been running at a consistent 30 with no major frame drops or glitches or anything of the sort. One of my friends did report that they did have their game crash in one specific area, but because autosave actually functions and doesn't completely eradicate your save file sometimes, it wasn't that big of a setback at all, so it's totally fine. Again though, can't really talk much about that one because I have not experienced the Switch 1 version of this game. No reason for me to downgrade, so whatever. Another thing that I like in regards to the looks of this game is its UI. I was very happy from day one that we were going to be in a modern setting for a Legends game because I knew for a fact that that UI was absolutely going to cook. Now, of course, it's no Persona or anything, but, you know, nothing is going to match a Persona UI. But just traversing the general menus looks and feels really nice. And I feel the exact same way about how it looks in battle, too. The way that everything looks is completely based around holotech, and that's super fun. I've always vibed with that like futuristic high-techy vibe that they've got going on, and here they did a very good job with it. And then lastly in this section, obviously, the music goes ballistic. Here's something that I don't say often. X and Y music was easily some of the best music in Pokemon. Two of some of my favorite tracks in the entire franchise came from X and Y. And one of those two tracks is finally back in this game, completely untouched because there was no need to remix or remaster it because it was already perfect. And I have zero complaints about that. If it wasn't clear, I'm talking about the boutique music, and you know, you spend a lot of time dressing your character up, so of all the themes to get stuck with on loop, hey, I don't think that's a bad one to have at all. And you know, it was very weird. I did 2 playthroughs, but I never really got sick of the overworld theme either. Constantly found myself humming along to it because it's just that much of a jam. Surprisingly enough, never got sick of the battle theme either. I think so far, for most generations, they've done a really good job of coming up with battle themes that don't get too terribly repetitive. But in this specific situation, absolutely adore the battle theme. It really is a get into action type beat, and I love that. And if we're talking themes, there are so many great themes in this game. Jacinth with the jazz swing situation she has going on, I can't get enough of that. And if I'm honest, I'm a little upset with myself that I didn't pay more attention to Lysander's battle theme my first run around, because oh my god, did they cook with that. Yeah, his theme may very well be one of my favorites in the game, and it might not be close, besides Jacinth's, but otherwise, yeah, generally speaking, the music in this game is fantastic. Just lovely. So that just about does it for my positives in regards to visuals and sounds. So why don't we go ahead and move on to gameplay and mechanics. First things first, this battle system is literally everything that I could have asked for. As I'm sure I've mentioned plenty of times in the past and many more times in the future, action RPGs are absolutely my favorite genre. There's just something about the aspect of developing your skill when fighting a bunch of different enemies that entices me so much. I have to imagine this probably stems from the fact that I grew up on Kingdom Hearts, which I adore as an action RPG. Now don't get it twisted, I absolutely love my turn-based RPGs. Pokemon was the first game I've ever played, Persona is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and so on and so forth. But action RPGs have always just naturally been a lot more engaging to me, which is precisely why when I saw for the first time that this game was taking a page out of Xenoblade's book, I was pretty much locked in from day one. Ironically, about a year or so ago, I made a video titled, "Could Real-Time Combat Work in Modern Pokemon?" We'll have a full, dedicated conversation about that soon enough, but long story short, I essentially came to the conclusion that real-time combat wouldn't work. Oh my god, am I so glad to be wrong. When I initially came up with the idea, I figured it would be a lot more complicated than it ever actually needed to be. How it's utilized here is very different, true enough, but not completely unrecognizable. Type matchups and how you raise your Pokemon are still a very important focal point of this game. You still have your team of 6, and it's still absolutely critical that you have a good amount of diversity within your team. So, in standard Pokemon fashion, you do everything in your power to have an answer to every situation. But now it's a lot faster. Instead of picking a move and waiting for all of the animations to end, you are throwing out moves and constantly moving around the field. In the most literal and genuine way possible, you are actually leading, guiding, and commanding your Pokemon directly. During the come up of this game, a lot of people were concerned about the fact that we're still controlling the trainer even though we're still commanding the Pokemon. So in turn, they kind of felt like the trainer being there would kind of get in the way and generally be kind of pointless. I only bring this up because everybody expressing that worry kind of made me think about it a lot, and it did kind of worry me a little bit. But going into it and actually experiencing it for myself, no, it makes plenty of sense as to why the trainer is here. During battles with regular trainers, your placement on the field is actually kind of critical. On top of that, it's not really all that smart to just throw out moves willy-nilly. You have to time what you're doing sometimes. The reason that there's no accuracy stats for the moves in this game is because how accurate you are depends on you, your timing, and your placement. If you understand enough the timing and the frame data of a move, you can actually get out of the way and completely avoid damage if you're careful enough. Okay, maybe frame data's an excessive way of saying it, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, in a similar vein, you also need to make sure that you use your moves at the proper times, and you need to know how those moves work before you just throw them out, because otherwise they may not always work. There are plenty of times where I've opted to utilize weaker moves on some of my mons simply because they come out a lot faster and I can get out much more damage, and if they end fast enough, I can get to the next move much faster. Yeah, Thunder could be a really great move on Ampharos, but it's so easy to dodge. But something like Thunderbolt is still nice and quick and still does a decent amount of damage. Yeah, Surf may be inherently stronger than something like Water Shuriken, but Water Shuriken hits multiple times and it's guaranteed 5 hits this time around, so yeah, I think I'm gonna opt to keep that instead. And if your Pokemon has access to them, you know, it's kind of critical that you utilize Fly, Bounce, Heat Crash, and all these moves that jump up and absolutely crush your opponents from above. Absolutely insane moves. And on top of that, while stat buffs and debuffs aren't as long lasting, they're still pretty critical, especially in these really speedy situations. Moves like Light Screen, Reflect, Detect, Protect, that was a mouthful, but moves like those I feel like are getting utilized a lot more often even by NPCs this time around. You're so heavily encouraged to experiment with so many different Pokemon and so many different moves this time around, and because everything operates so quickly now, it couldn't hurt to try something you've never tried before. I've seen a lot of people utilizing teams that you would never see. A new era has dawned for Heracross around the world because Boys has opened the eyes of everyone, apparently. I didn't even use Heracross, and I'm kind of sad that I didn't. Until now, I think I've only utilized Pokemon like Scrafty, like Glalie, like Frostlass, or like Scolipede one time before. But honestly, you know, I can see the vision now. I understand. Now, like I said, I was very much under the impression that this game was going to take a lot after Xenoblade. However, one of the primary things about Xenoblade was how you properly utilized your auto attacks. You would utilize your auto attacks to charge up all of your specials and things like that. That is not a thing in Pokemon whatsoever. And honestly, I'm super glad that that's not a thing, because there would then be a super crazy imbalance with how HP would work in this game. It's also very nice to be able to get in and out of battles very quickly, especially in late game when you have a lot of things to do and you gotta grind, whether you gotta train up your EVs or your IVs, you're just trying to generally grind up your Pokemon or hunt for a shiny or whatever the hell you're doing. Before your opponents even notice you, whether it's a wild Pokemon or a trainer or whatever else, you can hit a move, have your Pokemon run up on them, and just hit them like it's a drive-by. It's ridiculous. But I absolutely adore it, because this style of gameplay has created a completely new level of engagement that I didn't think was possible when it came to Pokemon. Which is funny, because I felt the exact same way about Legends Arceus. That being said, I would be more than okay if, going forward, the Legends titles kept this style of battle. I would really love to see what would happen if they were to continue to build and grow upon these mechanics, maybe even add more stuff like actual shouting commands and things like that. The mainline generational titles are going to keep turn-based battles, and that's all good and dandy. I'm totally fine with that. But as long as we're just going to continue experimenting with Legends titles like this, yeah, I want to see them move forward with this style. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. In a similar vein, I'm really happy that they brought Mega Evolution back the way that they did. A lot of people will definitely tell you that Mega Evolution is easily the best of the gimmicks that we've had so far. However, at the same time, a lot of them will also tell you that it was easily one of the most broken. Having those insane stat buffs to a certain Pokemon for an entire battle, no matter what, was definitely an insane decision. On top of that, there was essentially no cooldown, so every time you got into a new battle in Pokemon X and Y, you could just Mega Evo off rip. But I feel, more than ever, that Mega Evolution really feels at home in this game. It does exactly what it did beforehand, but now it feels a little bit more earned and it feels a little bit more proper. You actually have to go out of your way to build up your mega power so that eventually you can utilize Mega Evolution. However, you can't just use it willy-nilly. Once you start utilizing that meter goes down little by little until it runs out, and then you have to start the cycle over again and build it back up. And because of this, you're naturally utilizing it in more strategic ways. Instead of just mega evolving and bulldozing over every single opponent you come across, it's more likely that you're utilizing it for more critical events or moments. I mean, you don't want to just waste it on some little Timmy that you ran into during the ZA Royale, right? Nah, you're saving it for those hectic trainer battles that actually start to pick up steam in the latter half of the game. You're saving it for crutch moments when you need that extra boost of power to get that final hit in. And so, in turn, this mechanic has turned into everything it was supposed to. The perfect extra power buff. The temporary extra power buff. And I truly do believe that it works better here than any other game it's been introduced to prior. Also, can I say really quick, I absolutely adore so many of these Mega Evo designs. I love the genuine designs like Dragonite, for example, that pay homage to its pre-evolutions, or the ones like Scrafty that properly add on to or add to its aesthetic in a way, or the really stupid, funny, cute ones like Phalanx that are just adorable because why the hell not? It's like they saw all these different Pokemon mega evolving throughout the city and they all looked at each other and they're like, hold on, let's get in on that. What do we do, boys? I mean, come on, the Voltron connection, bro, I love it. It's so perfect for them. And say what you will, bro, Starmie's funny as hell. Starmie is funny as hell, man. I absolutely love it. But overall, I'm very, very happy and pleased to see that Mega Evolution came back, and if we see it again, hopefully it works something like this. Next to that, I do want to do a more dedicated and focused discussion on this, but generally speaking, I'm very happy that they took a lot of what worked from Pokemon Legends Arceus. Whenever you're out and traversing Lumio City freely, you could just run up to a Pokemon and start chucking Pokeballs at it. If you're out and about in a wild zone and you get into a fight with one Pokemon, there's a good chance its homies might show up and mess you up, bro. You might actually get jumped. Alpha Pokemon coming back is absolutely insane, but not something I'm necessarily complaining about because it adds that fun little fear factor that I didn't know I wanted so badly until Legends Arceus. And of course, with their return, it's possible for you to actually take damage and black out if they hit you hard enough. So, just like in the wild world of Hisui, you're going to be doing a lot of dodge rolling. Unless you're really reckless and just don't for whatever reason. And best of all, you can jump off of buildings. Because of course you can. Difference is, unlike Legends Arceus, you will be saved every time by your Rotom phone. So that kind of sucks, I can't lie. But, you know, it's nice in theory. However, that's not everything. One of the most important aspects to me is how they handled the menu in Legends Arceus, and I'm so happy that they brought back most of those aspects. When it comes to how you evolve your Pokemon, if I'm completely honest, I'm not sure why they ever added this mechanic, but it makes it so that you evolve them whenever you're ready, and you don't need to have them hold an Everstone or anything like that, and you don't need to consistently mash B every time they level up. This is one of the primary mechanics I would absolutely advocate to push into the generational titles. What the hell do we need something like an Everstone for? Just get rid of it. Literally just get rid of it. On top of that, the way that learned moves and TMs are handled is easily the best it's ever been. Being able to swap out new and old moves on the fly makes it so much easier for you to just go out and experiment with everything. Every time your Pokemon level up, you're not like pressured to get rid of a move immediately or anything like that. It's just added to the new list of moves that your Pokemon is capable of learning. And you know, weirdly enough, it's kind of nice every now and again to completely forget about that mechanic, because I'd be leveling up my Pokemon for so long and then be like, oh my god, wait, they probably have a new move ready to go. I could just swap that out and now they're doing twice the damage that they were before. That bite to crunch shift will always be one of my favorite things in this game now. But overall, just as much, if not even more than Legends Arceus, it's little changes like these that really help add to the gameplay flow of Legends ZA, and I'm super happy they're back. One thing that wasn't in Legends Arceus was the ability to catch a Pokemon after it's been defeated, but that worked out a lot better than I expected. Just because the Pokemon has been KO'd doesn't automatically mean a capture. It may generally help the capture rate, absolutely, but it won't guarantee the capture. I'm looking at you, Beldum. Jesus. Now, it may have sounded like I had a little bit of disdain in my voice, but that's not really the case. I'm very happy that they made it so that it's not completely easy and effortless to catch a Pokemon just because it's been downed. In some cases, like Beldum, it may actually be more beneficial for you to wait them out. And just like in traditional Pokemon fashion, the more damage you deal and the more status effects you inflict, the more likely their capture rate is to go up. So that's cool, and that's dandy. But it does give you a nice edge to give you a chance to capture them if you've downed them. So, awesome. So, can I say really quick that I'm also pretty happy with the Pokédex this time around as well. It feels very tight-knit and makes a lot of sense, especially because, again, it's been 6+ years or whatever since we've last seen Kalos, so there are some Pokemon that have moved into the sewers or to the overworld or wherever else. We have a very good variety of Pokemon to choose from, so even on my second playthrough, I was really excited to see what other Pokemon I could get on my team. And if I'm honest, I'm already looking forward to my next playthrough because I actually have no idea who I'm going to try to utilize next. I know we're supposed to be wanting every single Pokemon back from the National Dex era, but in all honesty, I feel like we'd get completely overwhelmed. I feel like it's kind of unnecessary to have that many Pokemon at this point, so, I can live with the 200 plus that are here? Not to mention that a very good chunk of the Pokemon from this dex got Mega Evolutions, so not only do we have a lot of general Pokemon to choose from, we have a wide variety of Mega Evolutions to test out too. That's great. Not to mention, we're still waiting on the DLC too. So that's cool. Love that for us. Delving more into the primary aspects of the game itself, can I say, the ZA Royale is a literal gift that I have been asking for in terms of progression. I'm sure I've mentioned this plenty of times before, or at the very least one time before somewhere, but I have always wanted a rank-up tournament-style system as opposed to the generic gym challenge that we've been utilizing for ages now. And this didn't just stem from nowhere. This came about because that's how the anime handled it. They set it up so that Ash was constantly battling different trainers and getting his rank up so that eventually when he reached the top 8 or 16 or whatever, he could participate in the championship tournament. I loved that concept so much and I wanted it to be implemented in the games so badly it's not even funny. One of the things that I absolutely adored about Pokemon Sword and Shield was how they handled their gym challenge because it actually did lead to a massive finale tournament. Something where it actually felt like a lot more people were involved than just me. Which is why the ZA Royale is precisely what I have been looking for. The general concept of everybody going out every single night and fighting against each other to get their ranks up is so awesome to me. And the way they did it here is really cool because you have so many different trainers with so much variety in their teams. And of course, you're going to do it so often, especially in late game, there's a good chance you'll come across some repeats when it comes to the teams and stuff like that, but for the most part, you're not even really thinking about that. But they actually did go out of their way to make a really cool, Battle Royale challenge, and it works out pretty damn well in my opinion. It also made for a really surprisingly addictive loop. During the day, you're going out, you're catching Pokemon, you're doing research tasks, you're exploring all these different wild zones, you're doing all of the side quests that you've been neglecting. But at night, you're collecting a bunch of different bonus cards and putting belt to ass, collecting experience, challengers tickets, and a hell of a lot of money. Despite nighttime apparently only lasting 15 to 20 minutes, you spend a lot of time here. It's always so much fun to see exactly how much you can get done in a single night, whether it's earning as many points as possible for a challenger's ticket or doubling your points so that you can get as much money in the morning as humanly possible. And if you just want to gain some levels for your Pokemon, well, hey, this is the best place to do that. During the postgame specifically, once you're strong enough, it definitely can get a little repetitive, but for a first attempt and throughout the entirety of the main game, I never really had any complaints. I think the thing that I like the most about this though is how it properly utilizes its trainers. One of my biggest complaints about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was that after a while, Pokemon trainers felt completely skippable, avoidable, and easily forgettable. Because we were in an open world setting, trainers wouldn't be able to stop you. You would have to go out of your way to find them. But because of that and the fact that we were able to get all of the experience and equipment that we needed out of raid battles, it made trainers kind of obsolete in that game. But not only have they given trainers more to do than any other prior Pokemon game beforehand, they have proven that they can make trainers work in an open world setting easily if they were to mimic this style. I think that when you're casually roaming around on the ground in an open world setting, it would be so much more fun for a trainer to spot you and actually run up to you and just start the battle, because why the hell not? To be fair, that's pretty much how it's implied to work in the original 2D games anyway, so honestly, there's absolutely no reason as to why trainers shouldn't continue to work exactly like this going forward. I also think it would be very interesting if they could catch you off guard just like you could catch them off guard. I think that'd make for a really interesting gameplay loop. Overall though, generally speaking, I really love the way the trainers work here, and I would love for them to continue working like this or in a similar fashion going forward, because trainers are way too important to this franchise to be sidelined like they were beforehand. Speaking of things that I thoroughly enjoy in terms of mechanics, the Rogue Mega Battles. I really do feel like these are where all of the gameplay mechanics as well as your skills are really put to the test. They truly did make actual, genuine boss battles out of the Rogue Mega Evolved Pokemon. Which was to be expected because, in all honesty, one of the best aspects about Pokemon Legends Arceus was the fact that we did have actual boss battles. And I personally think how they went about it here was actually really clever. These Pokemon are hitting you with moves that you cannot use or see throughout any other area in the game. And that's insane and something I'm not upset about. There are cases like Dragonite where it would actually go outside of the arena and hit you with the craziest Hyper Beam you have ever seen. You have Mega Tyranitar absolutely bullying you with a consistent stream of Stone Edges. There are literal situations in which it would actually be more beneficial for you to ball your Pokemon back and just start dodging the move until it's over, and then once you've found your opening, you get your Pokemon back out so you can freely attack again. Constantly throughout the battle, you're getting in as many hits as you possibly can, knocking out the little Mega Shards from the opponent so that you can build up your Mega Meter so you can Mega Evolve and do some actual genuine damage. Even if you're like 20 or 30 levels above the opponent, you're not doing real damage unless you're Mega Evolved. Straight up. Which is why you kind of need to plan accordingly as to who you're going to take in to be your hard hitter for every single Rogue Mega Evolved Pokemon battle. It's doable without Mega Evolution if you want to do that. If anything, that's precisely what something like plus moves are for. Just instead of Mega Evolving and getting buffs to all of your moves for a certain amount of time, you use a little bit of Mega Energy to buff one move for one attack. Maybe you're in a situation in which you've already good and well raised a Pokemon that's ready for a very specific battle. However, that Pokemon either doesn't have its Mega Ring yet, or it doesn't even have a Mega Evolution. Yeah, it might come down to you using plus moves, but in all honesty, if you want that battle to not last way too long, it's in your best interest to grab somebody powerful enough that can Mega Evolve to deal some actual damage. It's another one of those situations that really incentivizes diversity on your team and who you're raising, and I can't get enough of something like that. That's great. That's always a good thing. Moving back into the more general stuff out in the overworld, I gotta say, I think I was pretty right in saying that fashion is definitely the best it's ever been in a Pokemon game. Maybe it feels a little more dramatized because we came from having absolutely no options or anything of the sort in Scarlet and Violet, but even the simple act of A, not gender locking any of the clothing items, and B, being able to mix and match the colors of clothing items that have the same layout is so great. There are so many pictures people are putting out of them posted up with their Pokemon in their fits. I have yet to see any repeats whatsoever on anyone. Like, yeah, okay, maybe we are rocking the exact same hairstyle, but the coloring is likely different. Our entire fit is completely different. We're wearing a different head cover of some sort. We're able to stylize so differently that 9 times out of 10, I actually won't see anybody wearing anything that I am, and that is an amazing thing. I will say, it's kind of neat that they have so many different shops to choose from. Kind of weird that they didn't update throughout the game. That's a little unfortunate, but for the most part, there's so many different things to choose from that I didn't even really think about it all that hard. Regardless though, it's so much better than Scarlet and Violet that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Another thing that I'm actually really happy about is the side quests this time around. I really figured that if they were going to stick us in one single setting, that they were going to utilize side quests to the best of this game's abilities to really help flesh that out, to really get us around town much more than we would have just following the main story. And I'm happy to say that seems to be the case here. Obviously, there's a lot of the standard quests where you essentially just need to battle somebody. However, though, there does seem to be a lot of unique quests as well. Some will need you to collect an alpha Pokemon, others will need you to collect a jumbo-sized Pokemon. Some will request a bunch of very specific berries. And some will have you chasing their Pokemon down the street because it got the zoomies and decided to kill somebody. Long and short of it is, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of side quests going on in this game. Between each main mission, there's at least 4 or 5 waiting around the corner for you almost every time. But you know what? For the most part, the rewards are pretty damn worth it, so I have absolutely no qualms about going out of my way to complete them. And a lot of them are funny as hell anyway. Why am I attacking this man with a full power plus move Fire Blast because his Spinarak were not happy with him? That's super funny. Overall though, I feel like these side quests are a lot more fleshed out than they were in Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I feel like they're just properly placed. It's also really cool that they utilize side quests to take us to certain places like the sewers, or in a very specific case, the museum. That is easily one of the best side quests in Pokemon, because not only is it adorable as hell because Pupa is just so much more fun than I realized, but it's also an amazing cameo for all of the legend stuff and confirming how canon that stuff is. That's great. That's so much fun. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about and want to see more of. And when I say that, I mean primarily in the generational titles, because, you know, it's weird that we don't ever have actual side quests in those anyway. So yeah, we should start doing that maybe. Only in Legend ZA can you join a Starmie cult. That's amazing, man. We need more stuff like this. And lastly, when it comes to the positives of this section, I wasn't entirely sure where to put this because it could also have easily fit in the visuals as well as the story aspects, but I wanted to specifically take a moment to talk about Lysander Labs, or Lysandre, however you say it. Now, the thing about this area specifically is that it is a callback directly, more so than anything else in this game, to what happened in Pokemon X and Y. The weird thing though is that if you already know what happened in Pokemon X and Y and everything that led up to those events, nothing in this area is all that surprising to you. After all, if you played X and Y, you have already experienced the prime of this place, back when it was fully up and running and filled to the brim with Team Flare goons. And the story that we go out of our way to read is all of the stuff that we already knew and experienced 12 years ago. Long and short of it is, for new players, this is all new information and a really cool spot for all of the heavy lore. For older players, it is possibly, in my personal opinion, one of the coolest callbacks in Pokemon. Because not only is it a place we're already familiar with because we spent time here in X and Y, we actually have to maneuver it just like we did back then. We have to go through, power up, and utilize the correct warp pads to get all of the key cards so that we can progress to the elevator. However, instead of fighting Team Flare goons all over the place, you are fighting against the Pokemon that have taken refuge in this place. And so, in turn, it could be considered something of a little bit of a dungeon in a way. The tone shift when you enter this place is absolutely insane because it feels so different than almost anything you had experienced up to that point. And when you get done with it, you walk out and you're like, wait, I kind of want more of that. The prospect of having to traverse through something of a maze to hunt down these key cards while all of these different Pokemon are in your path is so neat. It's so cool. This is just generally something that we needed a lot more of. Because, yeah, there's no doubt this was easily one of the coolest parts of the game. By and far. Alright, I think we've spent a decent amount of time on the gameplay and mechanics, so lastly for the positives, why don't we go ahead and talk about the story and characters. First things first, I'm so happy that we finally got another actual genuine sequel to one of these games. Pokemon stories have always had so much potential to delve so much deeper into the stories that they tell and the lore that they introduce to us. Which is why we were so enamored with the concept of Pokemon Legends, a prequel that delved into the past of the Sinnoh region. We never thought we would get something like that. In the specific case of X and Y, there was so much introduced to us that was left to be desired. Which is why when I first heard that we were getting a Legends title in Kalos, I was more than certain we were going to delve more into the war aspect. A year ago, I would have bet money, slammed that bitch on the table to tell you that we were going back in time, we were going to be developing Lumio City from the ground up while dealing with all of these super angry Pokemon that are remnants of the war or something like that, while potentially dealing with an evil King AZ. We did not get that at all. I could not have been more far off. And in hindsight, that's my fault. That's completely my own assumptions getting the best of me, but I'm very okay with what we did get. In fact, I love it. We got a true, genuine conclusion to a story that we never thought we'd hear about ever again. Now, in my personal opinion, Generation 6 did not have that strong of a story to me. This is coming from somebody that played it on release and just a couple of months prior to this game coming out. It definitely existed, but it was absolutely one of Pokemon's weaker entries when it came to story. Which makes me feel insane because this game's entry makes it feel like the entirety of the story has elevated a lot for me. You get to learn so much more about AZ firsthand, and you get to see a different side of him. Long gone are the days of the wandering lost soul hobo that we have been memeing on for the last decade. The tears that were shed over this man at the end of this game really goes to show how much of a special place he had in so many people's hearts without them even realizing that. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily cry. I definitely wasn't happy about it, but I understood why it had to happen. It made plenty of sense, and I was happy with the conclusion that this man got to rest because his journey was done. His long, hard-fought battle against himself was won. If it wasn't the guilt of losing his best friend, it was the guilt of firing the weapon. If it wasn't the guilt of firing the weapon, it was the guilt of all the sacrifices he made to get his best friend back. And if it wasn't that, it was something else, and so on and so forth. He was always at constant war with himself for 3,000 years. There are people that have given up much sooner than that, and he didn't. He's more than earned his rest, and I was more than glad to help him get here. Okay, that sounds kind of crazy. I wasn't happy to help put him in the ground. I was happy to help him find peace. Let's get that clear really quick. AZ is not the only character we grew more attached to throughout the story, though. I found myself having an amazing time getting to know a majority of this cast. You're first introduced to Team MZ with Urbane and Tawny, Naveen and Lita. One way or another, AZ gave all of these individuals a space to truly be themselves and learn more about themselves and their Pokemon. In turn, they only felt that it would be right to help this older gentleman run his hotel. They spent a lot of time together, eating dinners, helping out Lumio City, specifically Quizartico Inc., which we'll get to in a second, and generally speaking, becoming something of a little family. And because of these connections, it was always such a good time to see all of these characters interacting around the meeting/dinner table. It was a nice change of pace to have like a tight-knit group that you were pretty much seeing consistently throughout the game with you all the time. Throughout these two playthroughs, these characters have grown on me a lot, and I hope to see them more. And even outside of them, there are a lot of characters that you get to know and eventually fall in love with throughout the journey. I didn't think that a character like Vinny would grow on me as much as he did, but I enjoy his presence a lot. He's like the fun uncle that's serious when he needs to be, but generally a good time to be around. You've got really fun characters like Tarragon, who will go out of his way to showcase his love for his granddaughter by basically doing her work for her because she's so dedicated to her gaming and streaming that she wouldn't get out of her seat to do it herself. And I'll be completely honest, I like Canary enough, but she's kind of a copy and paste of Iono, right? So it's like, you know, she's a little different in her own unique ways, but she's kind of got the same general gist down. But, you know, cool character. We've got characters like my short King Corbeau leading the Rust Syndicate. He's obviously supposed to be like the leader of a Yakuza-esque situation with a heart of gold, and I can't help but love him. He's so cool. The Rust Syndicate feels like they're a tight-knit family, and you just can't help but want to get to know more about them. Also, headcanon, if he had a voice, he would absolutely sound like Tob Habercorn, specifically the voice of Death the Kid. I just think that would be way too fitting, right? Jacinth is such a good time. I loved her from frame one. Her design is fire, and throughout that entire thing, she had one thing on her mind and one thing only, and that was taking all of Lumio City's strongest and putting belt to ass in front of everyone. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she wasn't stopping until she got it, and she definitely got what she wanted. I also find it very interesting that she abused the holotech more than anybody else in the entire game, and that was just so much fun. And as much as I could go on about Gwyn and Ivor and other characters that I would have loved to see even more of, the gist of it is, I really enjoy this cast a lot. They did a great job introducing a cast that would constantly throughout the game get you to feel like Lumios was more and more like a home to your character. You fell in love with the city because it fell in love with you, and that's evident in all of the characters that helped you out at the end of the game, because they all showed up to fight alongside you, and that is just beautiful, man. We love to see this kind of thing. And if we're talking positives on the characters, another major plus is easily the development that Lysander has gone through. Before the post-game events of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, this man was presumed dead, by the way. Is any of that stuff canon? Does it matter? Anyway, Zygarde going out of its way to save him from that explosion gave him a lot of time to reflect on what he almost did. It took him time, but he finally realized just how wrong he was about cleansing the earth that way. And in turn, he eventually came to realize exactly what AZ was struggling with. The guilt of utilizing a weapon like that, something that powerful, should not be the burden of any human to bear. It is truly unruly. Which is why, with the help of Zygarde, it helped set him on the proper path. And he became something of a very subtle guide for you. Somebody who you needed to get by to prove that you were worthy of standing by Zygarde's side. Because both of them knew good and well that there was a power surging underneath the city that was bound to erupt at some point, and Zygarde would need the help of the strongest trainer, and they both felt that it was you. You just kind of had to prove it. But seeing him smile and walk off in the credits off to do his own thing, very satisfying. I think he also deserves to go on a nice long journey of reflection and learning and growth. Best villain development we've seen by and far, easily. Another thing that was a little bit more subtle throughout the story was how they developed what was happening with Lumio City. At the end of the day, what Quizartico Inc. was initially trying to do was for a noble cause. They wanted a situation in which people and Pokemon could live unitedly in harmony within a city like Lumios. However, the more wild Pokemon that were attracted to the city, the more wild zones they had to set up as a precaution. And in turn, it was getting a little bit tight within the city, and the people were not necessarily happy about something like that. Businesses were getting interrupted, people were having harder times getting into their homes, people were losing their third spaces like parks to hang out in. As much as we love Pokemon, as we've seen throughout our journey, not all of them are going to be friendly. I bring this up specifically because one of the biggest concerns about this game during its come up was how the heck wild zones were going to work in this city and why they were so uncomfortable and tight knit. The very ironic thing about that thought process was the fact that that is precisely what the people of Lumio City were thinking. Why are we doing this? I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but ironically, a lot of people's way of thinking during this game's uprising was pretty much in line with the theming. I don't know, I just found that really, really interesting. And now for my final major positive. This game easily has one of, if not the most climactic endings in the series by far. What can I say, man? The climax to this game is just straight up epic. I don't think I have a better word for it. The suppressed power of Angie finally flowing out of Prism Tower and turning it into a giant beast. You utilizing all of the connections you have built throughout the game to fight off all of the rogue Mega Evolved Pokemon that are scattered throughout the city, aided by even former Team Flare remnants, fighting those flower things that are essentially reminiscent of the boss's health and them actually doing some real damage sometimes. And Zygarde, of course, becoming one of the greatest legendaries to ever do it, bruh. This right here, this was a finale. And a beautiful one at that. For the most part, the build-up felt earned because it was across the span of 2 games and the payoff felt satisfying. It was an inevitable ruin that you had to put a stop to. And by that point, you've grown so fond of Lumio City that you have no problem stepping up to the plate. Yeah, this was truly awesome. I simply don't have any better word for it. Phew! Hey, take a breather. Because you have now made it to the halfway point, probably. I know, I had a lot of positive things to say, but you and me both see that timer down there. We still got a ways to go, and a lot to talk about. I hope you've taken the time to refill your snacks, your drinks, or whatever else, because the coin has been flipped, and we will now be talking about my negatives in regards to Pokemon Legends ZA. Like I said, we're switching up the formula just a little bit. We're gonna go back to visuals and sounds first. And for my first major negative, no voice acting in this game genuinely hurts it. The primary reason that I bring this up first is because we've been having this issue since the beginning of the Switch era. It's one thing to have 2D sprites and pixels have only exclusively text. That's totally fine, it was never a problem back then. Hell, I'm not even complaining about the 3DS era. We weren't working with nearly the same power as we are now, so honestly, of all the things that those games needed, voice acting was not all that immediate. But ever since that first cutscene with Piers, who's supposed to be singing into a microphone, it has been a genuine issue. We cannot have fully 3D animated cutscenes with characters actively talking like their mouths are synced to something with nothing coming out. This is getting really old and really pointless. In the case of Pokemon specifically, they can absolutely afford voice actors, but they don't want to take the time to have to do something like that, which is beyond absurd. Especially because I don't think they realize just how many of us, if not most of us, would gladly play with the Japanese dub. Just play it in sub. That's totally fine. Or even pulling like a Zelda situation where most of the dialogue is just grunts at the very, just something. Otherwise, we gotta switch up the tactics or something, cause yeah, this is not, this is not working. So yeah, you gotta pick a side here. You either need to add voice acting or we need to stop having completely silent cutscenes, cause there's gotta be a balance here. Next major issue that there is simply no avoiding. Why are all of the walls completely flat and copy and pasted? To me, it wasn't like the biggest deal in the world because, you know, 90% of the time that's not what you're paying attention to. But when you do notice it, you can't really look away and not think about it anymore. It's just kind of unfortunately there and you just kind of have to deal with it. And that really sucks because why did we do this? I'm fully aware that Game Freak is never given any form of time, not even a semblance of a second to actually work on these games the way that they want to. But like, even Scarlet and Violet had textures on their walls. In whatever city you were in, they at least had a semblance of texture. Why is that not the case here? I have to imagine that when developing something like this, it's very hard to get all the details down for every single little building within a city, especially when the players are just gonna run by them. But that's not really much of an excuse, not when plenty of other games beforehand have managed to do something like this perfectly fine, despite the fact that we're just running by everything. Generally speaking, there's always some form of weird sacrifice that they have to make in order to get the game out at a reasonable time. I just figured it wouldn't be something so insanely obvious. And honestly, it probably wouldn't even be that much of a big deal to people if we weren't specifically in this setting for the entirety of the game. I think back to the infamous games back on PS3. Those games had a very similar situation in which both entire games took place in one city, one setting. they probably had to do even more work considering the fact that there was a hefty parkour mechanic, we'll talk about it, that were implemented in those games that were pretty generally critical. Mind you, those games were only 2 years apart, so how in the hell did they manage to get it down back to back and we couldn't get that here? Legit? What happened? Why was this the sacrifice that needed to be made? The detailing of the city? That's so important. I have to imagine it's because they spent most of their time just generally getting the games to work properly and function stably on both Switch 1 and 2. But again, of all the sacrifices to be made for that, I can't imagine why it had to be something so visually obvious. And speaking of things that are visually annoying, why do we still utilize that like fade to black or fade to white transition for everything? We don't need to fade to black or white every single time somebody decides to heal my Pokemon. It also doesn't need to happen in every cutscene where somebody either takes a Pokemon out or returns a Pokemon to their Pokeball. We have literal animations for that. Why are we not using them? I think it's just another one of those things where if it wasn't just so common and so obvious that they were cutting corners utilizing this, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it happens all the time. At the very least, thank Shinx that loading times are better, because otherwise I would have lost my mind. We just have so many games now that utilize cutscenes in-game so that they could just pan the camera around, just swing it behind the character, and you just press on. We never do that in Pokemon, and that really sucks. Even when I did notice it throughout both of my playthroughs, it was just one of those things where I just got used to it and stopped thinking about it, but you know, it's still definitely there and very present, and it's still kind of annoying sometimes. And lastly, of my negatives in the visuals and sounds department, yeah, it really sucks that there's not more enterable buildings and that the sewer system was kind of lackluster. I think it just generally kind of sucks because this was absolutely prime time to utilize something like the Paris Catacombs to really help flesh out an underground where we could have hidden a lot more Pokemon and potentially story if we really wanted to. Like, yeah, the sewer system is neat and I'm glad it's there at all, but it's extremely simple. I'm sure I would have been a little less upset about it if at the very least it contained something down there like actual puzzles or some crazy boss or something like that, but that's never really the case. You're taken down there like 2 times for the primary story and twice more for side quests. The most unique mission of the 4 being you going down there to smash a bunch of mega crystals to clear it out. And that's kinda it. Otherwise, it's just go down here and battle this person, or this person. And it's just kinda And same situation in the overworld, in which you're led to certain areas during your journey, which will take you inside buildings that you can go in and out of whenever you want afterwards, but that first initial time, when you've dealt with whatever you need to deal with in those buildings, you're done. You don't really have much of a reason to ever go back inside any of them. Like, yeah, the museum is awesome, but once you've done the Spupa side quest, you don't really ever have a reason to go back there. There's a specific quest in which you kind of need to go to this guy's like office or apartment or whatever and clear out the ghost type Pokemon that are infesting it. Like, okay, great, this is exactly what I've been asking for more of, but once you've done that, you never have a reason to enter that building ever again. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty to do around the city where that's not like the only thing on my mind, but at the same time, you would think that because we're in a situation like this, they would have better utilized the city to make it so that we could constantly go into buildings and have more unique shops and things like that, or very unique Pokemon that are hidden in there. I don't know, I feel like they just squandered the opportunity to do more, to utilize the city more, and that sucks. That being said, I think we've added our bun and our lettuce and finished up our thoughts in regards to the visuals and sounds. Why don't we go ahead and get to the meat and cheese and talk about the gameplay and mechanics that I didn't find so favorable. Let's start with the kickoff issue. That tutorial is unnecessarily long. Again, this is coming from somebody who has played Pokemon his entire life and played through this game twice back to back. It's just a constant growing frustration that these developers absolutely refuse to acknowledge the people that have been playing this game forever. Or at the very least, somebody who recently played through the entire game already and is playing through it for a second time and knows exactly what needs to be done. I don't need to be taught the game all over again. And I think it's especially frustrating in this case because you are constantly, throughout that tutorial, seeing so many different things in the background, and they are just out of your reach, and you try to go out there and get it before the game tells you you can't go this way yet. Go back to doing what you're supposed to be doing and following the plot. There's also not really a very clear indication once you actually do inevitably get your freedom. In my first playthrough, I was initially just kind of pushing the boundaries until it didn't stop me anymore. It's just so absurd that it takes longer than you would expect to get to that point. By my second time through, thankfully, I already knew what was going on, so I just burst through that sucker in like probably under an hour. But I'm not too surprised that something like this happened again. They're fully under the impression that if they don't handhold all of the newer players or the kids that are trying out this Pokemon game for the first time, that they're gonna get upset when they don't know what to do and they're going to blame the game for that. So just like every other game up to this point, they make sure to go through every precaution possible to make sure that they handhold you through every little nook and cranny. Maybe one day Game Freak will recognize me, a grown-ass man, someone who is capable of figuring out how the buttons on his own controller works. Today was certainly not that day. Another thing that kind of sucks, especially because there's an online setting, abilities not being in this game is kind of weird. Everything is a lot faster now, but it's because of that I feel like having abilities wouldn't be as interruptive as you would think. I imagine it would be kind of hard to implement something like Intimidate, but like, I don't think it would be all that crazy. Like, if you were to throw a Pokemon out that has that ability in front of another Pokemon, that's who it would hit with Intimidate. And it's as simple as that. I don't think it's all that crazy. Like, yeah, sure, maybe it wouldn't work as well as I'm thinking for online modes, but for the primary game, you could easily have implemented that, especially because 90% of your battles throughout the main game are 1v1s. So I think it would have worked perfectly fine, especially moves like Moxie or Sturdy or whatever else. Not that they were necessarily hard, but I do think that abilities could have helped a lot during a lot of these boss battles. If I'm honest, this one I'm not like too insanely upset over. I just find it strange that they probably could have made abilities work. They just kind of didn't. Moving on to things that are actually really disappointing, the wild zones, because those usually have very little to offer. Outside of the tutorial, there were no actual story beats that took place inside of a wild zone, which really sucks, cause I think it would have been really neat if we had an instance or two where we had to help out trainers fight against a regular alpha Pokemon because they were struggling inside of a wild zone, or maybe we had to catch a certain Pokemon that was roaming around in the wild zone and me and the other trainers are chasing after it, or something of that caliber. But no, that's never usually the case at all. For story purposes, it's to contain wild Pokemon. For gameplay purposes, it is specifically for you to find certain wild Pokemon. And that's kind of it. The idea in theory is awesome, but I don't feel like it was executed as well as it could have been. It's great for shiny hunting and getting very specific Pokemon over and over again because you at the very least know what Pokemon are going to spawn there during the day and likely at night, but in all honesty, you're spending a lot more time in battle zones than you ever are in wild zones, and that's kind of buns. I'm just extremely thankful that Pokemon also spawn outside of the wild zones, because otherwise, that would have been a major issue. I don't know. They're simply just too small with not that much to do outside of catching the Pokemon in that little circle. Unfortunate that there wasn't much more to it, but hey, it is what it is. Speaking of battle zones though, one thing that was kind of strange to me is the fact that, once again, trainers never seem to be battling each other. They only specifically go after me. I know that this is more of like a visual element than a gameplay element, but at the same time, again, coming off of Xenoblade, I feel like that could have worked really well as a gameplay element too if you could third-party somebody. I don't know, I feel like I would be a lot more immersed in the world if the ZA Royale actually felt like a genuine battle royale amongst all of the trainers. I could have easily seen a situation in which they gave us battle cards that would give us bonus points and money for third-partying, for jumping somebody else during a fight. When I imagine the ZA Royale, if it were like animated, I would imagine like a bunch of different people just fighting each other all over Timbuktu, things exploding on rooftops, people just shooting stray fireballs at one another, just an absolute, genuine battle zone. Kinda sucks that we didn't take advantage of the idea and utilize something like that here. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the ZA Royale as a concept, I just simply feel like it could have been a little bit more with something like this added to it. And if we're talking about underutilized battle mechanics, I think that the rogue mega Pokemon fights are severely underutilized. Now, at the time that I'm recording this part of the audio, I don't know what the DLC entails, nor do I know when that's coming out. But this is how I feel specifically about the base game. They easily could have set it up just like 8th gen and 9th gen, where random rogue mega Pokemon can spawn wherever, as opposed to just specifically in story beats. I only say this because, again, I think that these battles are really fun. They feel like genuine boss battles. I think they could have used a little bit more difficulty overall, but I think that's not a contained issue. That's a general issue. And even if we are talking story beats, there are definitely moments that absolutely could have used something like these. Like, what do you mean Lysander Labs doesn't have a rogue Mega Houndoom down there? That could have easily been a well-earned boss fight placed in between you getting all of the key cards and discovering what actually happened with the weapons. Same thing with the sewers. How in the hell are you not utilizing the sewer as a prime boss fight area? What are we thinking? I don't know, that just seems like completely wasted opportunities to me. We have so many different Mega Pokemon now that you could have easily fit those rogue Pokemon down there as boss fights. I don't really see the excuse. Again, I probably sound insane because by the time you guys see this, we'll know everything about the DLC and that might change a lot. But as of right now, that's how I'm feeling about the base game and how they handled rogue mega Pokemon battles. Moving along, another specific thing that I definitely take issue with are how the Mega Shards and colorful screws are handled as collectibles. As far as Mega Shards go, I don't mind them being utilized as a currency, but I should be able to store more than 999, or at least get like an extra bag throughout the story at some point that allows me to contain more, especially because everything in the one store that I can use it in is pretty damn expensive, especially in the post-game. Because what do you mean I can max out my bag of Mega Shards and I can only purchase 9 large candies? What kind of joke is that? And then as far as the colorful screws go, it's just another one of those situations in which it's not really worth going out of your way to collect all of them. It's pointless. You get a big Canary plushie. It doesn't do anything, by the way. It's just a decorative piece for the hotel, your room in the hotel, which you are barely ever in. So whenever you come back to this game, you get a plushie that you're probably almost never going to see or go out of your way to look at more than one time. So no, I'm not going out of my way to collect all 100 whatever screws, especially when I don't even need all of them to max out all of the plushies. I don't know. I just feel like that could have been better, or at the very least, just make it so that you get all of the screws, you could get all of the upgrades, max all of those out. That's when you get the plushie, and maybe that doubles everything. Great. I didn't mean to put this out of order, but I feel like we should talk about it anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and step back and talk again about Lysander Labs, because as much as I like that area, it's really, really upsetting that we didn't get more like this. We needed more puzzles, more dungeons, more mazes, and we got like a small taste of that with Lysander Labs, which really sucks because we should have been doing more like this in the sewers, in apartment buildings that may have been blocked off by certain Pokemon or certain areas that you need cards for or keys for or whatever. I don't know, maybe I sound crazy saying something like that, but I feel a little frustrated that we got a glimpse of what more of this game could have been at the ass end of it. Especially because, like I said earlier, there is absolutely no reason as to why there wasn't a boss fight here of any kind. Super weird. I mean, you are forced into like 2 different alpha Pokemon fights, but those aren't that serious. I don't know. Maybe you disagree with me on that one. Whatever. It is what it is. My next major issue, the quote-unquote parkour. Ain't it, Chief? I mean, come on. There had to be some alternative option out there, as opposed to only being able to climb up slanted slopes. It really did feel like the very early days of 3D Pokemon, oddly enough, where there would be like the smallest little ledge that was completely upright that you simply could not just hop over. You had to find a completely alternate path to get around it, even though the trainer should be physically capable of getting over it. The idea, again, is there because, like, that's the entire point. You're utilizing all of these crazy structures that the construction workers are using as platforms to get on top of buildings and to get across the way and to collect colorful screws and whatever other items are hidden within them. But if you're gonna do something like this, you have to make the parkour look and feel good. 9 times out of 10, when I'm doing the parkour, it always usually feels like I'm not supposed to be doing it the way that I'm doing it, and I'm finding alternative ways to make it work just so I can get the items that I need. God forbid I miss a step because the trainer can't grab onto ledges and pull themselves up. They have to start from the very bottom. And again, it wouldn't be that big of a problem if the parkour was actually a properly developed and intended mechanic, which is very clearly not the case here. The Rotom Glide works a lot worse than it looks. And I can't lie, that's really unfortunate because, again, in a setting like this one where you're going from building to building, rooftop to rooftop, you kind of want something like that to not feel clunky. So next time, let's not chicken out. Let's actually have a jump button of some sort. Let's make it so that we can grab a ledge whether or not it's upright or slanted. Funny that we're bringing up Infamous twice in this video, that's crazy, but I'm not saying that the trainer needs to play anything like Cole McGrath, but we can make it so that they're at least a little more athletic. We can make it so that they are capable of doing very simple things like pulling themselves up. The next very strange thing to me is the fact that there is absolutely no rideable Pokemon whatsoever. And in a similar vein, that skates aren't a thing for some reason. Why the hell not? I mean, granted, most things are within teleport distance, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, but at the same time, why? This is one of the primary regions where Rhyhorn racing takes place. Rhyhorn isn't even in the game. Also, this is the generation where they introduced skates so that we can get around faster as opposed to running everywhere. We haven't seen a single skater throughout Lumio City, let alone obtaining our own skates, which is absurd to me, because that would have been so much fun. Call me an old head, I don't really care, but I kind of miss the days when a video game would reward you for actually completing the game and allow you things that could make it so that you can basically break the game because it doesn't really matter anymore. You've completed everything that you need to complete. Because we should have the option to be able to ride around on either Pokemon or skates or whatever throughout Lumio City to get around faster, because it just seems like the perfect setting for it. Let me get to the rooftops faster of the battle zone by riding up there on my Dragonite. Let me go, man. Set the chains off, man. Let me free. And you gotta remember, rollerblading around Kalos was like a big time sport. Like, they had actual dedicated areas among the routes that were just straight up rails for people to grind on and stuff like that. Entire, like, miniature parks for people. I mean, come on. Karina's entire gym was based around the very concept. Why are we not utilizing that more in Lumio City of all places? You want to give us some parkour? Let us do some absolutely insane skate tricks, dude. That would have been, oh my god, that would have been awesome. And yet again, that just doesn't seem to be the case. So, again, it's just another situation of how unfortunate. Speaking of things that have made no return from X and Y, why is there no form of Pokemon-Ami, or even any real Pokemon interactability for that matter? Like, don't get it twisted, it's really neat and really cool that I get to pose them with the camera so that we could take really nice pictures together, but there should be more ways that I could bond with my Pokemon. Cause I'm not gonna lie to you, Chief, the cafe situation, a lot more underwhelming than I thought it was gonna be, because I thought that for sure was gonna be one of the primary ways that we were gonna end up bonding with our Pokemon. And, you know, don't get me wrong, in a way it is, but all you do is get a drink and you just kind of take maybe a picture or two and you leave. Unless it's a battle cafe, you don't go inside of it, and you don't even get like a cute cutscene or anything with your Pokemon to signify that your bond has been strengthened. You just sit down and you take a picture. It just feels like a big nothing burger there. It also feels like insult to injury when they have very clearly acknowledged Pokemon-Ami by placing a cafe titled Cafe-Ami in the game. That was their way of saying, yeah, we remember it exists. This is a reference to it, but you're not getting Pokemon-Ami here. You don't get to feed your Pokemon or pet them or play with them or anything. And that's really buns, because Pokemon Amie was definitely one of the critical, more standout mechanics within Pokemon X and Y. One that we didn't think we would be able to live without. And we got forced to live without it game after game after game. It was the most Pokemon interactability that we had ever gotten, and we just haven't seen anything like it since. And I think the craziest part is we can't even, like, generally just walk up to our Pokemon and interact with it at all. Even Legends Arceus had something like that, where you could at least have your Pokemon acknowledge you when you interact with it. We don't even have that. That's super strange. Once again, I just figured that within the region that it was all introduced in, I figured this was their time to really go full circle and bring it back in the best way they possibly could have. And they didn't do it at all. Yes, Game Freak, you go, girl. Give us nothing. After that, the general post-game, quick as hell. Easily wrapped up within an hour if you really want. And this isn't me necessarily saying that the post-game in of itself is bad. I actually think that the post-game is cool as hell. It gave us the best battle against Lysander by far. It gave us a sick-ass multi-phase fight against Zygarde. The Infinite Royale, which you could essentially just farm as much as you need for experience, money, candies, or whatever else. And just a tidbit more lore on Urbane and Tawny, which, you know, we were kind of missing throughout the entire game. So all of that, on top of the usual Pokemon shenanigans of just completing the Pokédex, doing all of the research quests, and just shiny hunting, that's cool, that's fine. But again, being the sequel to X and Y, this seemed like it would have been the perfect opportunity for some Emma missions or something. I was gonna say this in the story and character segment, but you know, in this case, it kind of goes hand in hand, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But Emma as a character was severely underutilized. The way they put her on the literal box art and advertised her, I figured she was going to play a much more critical role in this story. This could not be farther from the case. She is literally the biggest lie of this game so far. You have 2 battles with her. One early game, one late game, and she helps you with the Ivor situation. That is the extent of her presence. Not even kidding. Well, and she kind of guides you to Zygarde for that first Rogue Mega Battle, but other than that, she didn't do all that much. Which, again, is crazy, because you would think that with Looker's protege, we would get a lot more out of her. So I figured, just like her teacher, we would have gotten post-game side quests out of her to do a little bit more around the city. Nope. Not at all, I guess. Again, the DLC could potentially remedy this, but as of now, as far as base game is concerned, Emma literally gave us nothing. And that is truly, I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing me say it, but unfortunate. And last but not least, at least from what I've experienced, the online is a little easier than I would have anticipated. It took me all of 15 minutes to go from rank Z to rank K to get the Greninjite, and that was all I needed. Here's the thing though, I have no doubt in my mind that things are definitely going to be getting a little bit trickier over the next coming months, because at the beginning there, most people were only using their endgame teams, which is probably why there wasn't any real like strategy or nuance to it yet. It was just all straight hands. Now that everybody's much more well established, they're figuring out how to utilize EV and IVs properly, we could see a very different situation going into next season. But even then, that online mode is crazy generous. Like, you be getting points for participating, straight up. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we have an online mode at all to really test out our teams and just go all out and stuff like that. But I mean, it's lacking a little bit of depth, and it's lacking any real incentives outside of the Mega Stones. Unless there's some reward I don't really know about, I don't really have much of an incentive to get all the way up to rank A. Pretty much just bragging rights, right? I feel like it could be a fun little competition between me and my friends to see next season who could reach rank A the fastest, you know? And it's not like I could battle friends or anything like that in there. Those have to be specifically private battles. So just a little unfortunate, because it feels like there could be a little more there, but who knows? They could give out some major updates that could make changes that would make it worth it to revisit. So that just about wraps it up for all of my negatives in regards to gameplay and mechanics. So why don't we head on into the last segment, which is my negatives for story and characters. Now, in this case, I only have two real negatives. The first of which being, I really wish we had more development for Team MZ. Now don't get it twisted, I still very much enjoy these characters. It's just that, you know, in typical Pokemon fashion, it is very rare to see a character go through a genuine arc. It's great that Lita has a dream of her own, that she wants to be a dancer, and same with Naveen, it's awesome that he wants to be a true designer. But I feel like we didn't really dive into those things as much as we probably could have. Obviously, I don't hold any of the other characters to this same standard because they are not following us throughout the entirety of the game, having meetings with us, having dinners with us, having different meetups with us all the time. One of these days, I just really want Pokemon to let loose and give their characters more nuance, more arc, more depth than we ever could have imagined before. And I feel like there was a good couple of opportunities to utilize that here, but that just simply did not happen. And for my last issue, the fact that once again in these games, there is no actual villain. Like I said, I like the story that's presented here, and I like that everybody has a common goal to do everything that they can to protect Lumio City from an ancient weapon that never should have been revealed, released, or shot off. Most of the mainline Pokemon games that we have gotten during the Switch era outside of the remakes have not had a villain outside of Legends Arceus. And like I said, I do like that they're taking a very different approach with their story and writing, but like what, are we gonna act like bad guys don't exist anymore? I will say that every single villain or at least antagonistic force that we've been introduced to throughout the last decade only showed up at the very end of the game. Come on. Like, I will definitely agree in which Scarlet and Violet and this game, story-wise, has proven you don't necessarily need a direct, obviously cartoonishly evil bad guy to get a story going. But at the same time, it is nice every once in a while to have a direct antagonist. The biggest bad guy Kalos has ever witnessed is one of its saviors now. I mean, it's great. I love it. Give me some evil, bro, please. Jokes aside though, while I do want a genuine actual antagonist, maybe one that's a little more morally gray or someone that truly believes that they are doing the right thing, that would be awesome. But the writing the last couple of games surprisingly has been consistently pretty damn good, and if they could at least continue this streak, I'll be pretty happy with that. So that just about wraps it up for all of my negatives in regards to Pokemon Legends EA. So, Pokemon Legends EA is in fact another Pokemon game with a ton of flaws. But are we really surprised by that? As I've said for years on end, every Pokemon game since the beginning of the Switch era has had something drastically holding it back for one reason or another. I have never, ever seen a franchise with nearly as much potential to be the greatest of all time like Pokemon. If the games actually got a little bit more time in the oven, yeah, maybe they'd look a little bit more modern. Maybe we'd actually have voice acting. And maybe they wouldn't be as handholdy because they would be able to take the time to realize that older players are still playing these games. Maybe they'd be able to take the time to really flesh out a bunch more puzzles and mazes and things like that, like Lysander Labs, and scatter that more throughout the game and make it something way more extravagant. Maybe we would have an actual underground system more than the sewers, and maybe even the Paris catacombs that we've been missing out on. And maybe we'd have a little bit more time to delve deeper into the stories of these characters like we never have before. And that's really unfortunate that we couldn't do more like that. But I can't sit here in good conscience and say that this is anywhere near a bad game. In fact, as you can probably see from my positives, this is easily some of the most fun that I've had with a Pokemon game, period. So, as somebody that has been consistently and thoroughly playing these games for the last decade on home console, I've gotta say, I really love this game. When it boils down to it, my positives vastly outweigh my negatives when it comes to this title. They've introduced so many cool and neat and awesome concepts that I would really love to see going forward. Gameplay mechanics that had me stuck in a loop for 2 full playthroughs. And it's got a story that actively builds upon and expands on previous lore, something we simply have not done often enough with this series. Like I've said 100,000 times in the past 4 years, Game Freak is not a bad development company. They simply need more time to cook and a bigger budget to work with. And we could see some genuine sauce unseen before with this franchise. But even then, they still do everything that they can to be as creative as possible when working with these limitations. This game is not perfect by any means, and I think that its flaws really do showcase some of the biggest problems with the franchise and with Pokemon Company. But there was effort put in here. Struggling effort, but effort nonetheless. After all, we never would have gotten something like an experimental title like the Legends games if they weren't trying at all. I mean, come on, even the greatest developers in the world can only do so much on a $5 budget, a ring pop, and a deadline of tomorrow. For anybody that's unaware, this game's budget was the equivalent out here of $13 million, which, if you know anything about game development and budgets for AAA titles, that is absolutely nothing. Scarlet and Violet was $12 million, so yeah, you could see a little bit of a difference, and I really hope that that means that Pokemon Company little by little is realizing just how damned important the games actually are, despite them not even being the primary moneymakers. And you know, if the rumor about the next games having the budget of $30 million turns out to be true, if they take their time with that, we could be looking at an entirely different franchise. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that for now, because speculation is just speculation. What I'm trying to get at here is that there is more to the conversation than this game being outright good or outright bad. Just because I can see this as a good game doesn't mean that I'm completely blind to the problems that are there and that it presents. And just because somebody thinks it's bad doesn't mean that there aren't good qualities about the game that we could want to see later on down the road. But if the developers really weren't trying, then these games absolutely would have functioned just like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet did Frame 1. We remember that, right? Because that was an entirely different world. But I'll save that comparison for another day. Pokemon Legends ZA is an absolute anomaly of a title. Just like its predecessor, it strives to do something new with the Pokemon franchise, things unseen before. And I personally adore what they did here. It's given me a connection to Lumio City and the characters living within it that I did not expect at all. And because of that, I could definitely see myself coming back to this game time and time and time again. But I really do love this game, and I really do think, after walking away from it for a minute, that we do have some stuff to look forward to when it comes to the future of Pokemon. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. Oh my goodness, guys. That's crazy. This one's an hour 30, bruh. This one's like right smack dab in the middle of the length between my original Legends Arceus length video and my Scarlet and Violet review. That's crazy. But yeah, this was a good one. This was a solid one to do. I had a lot of fun recording this one, and I really wanted to get this one done as early as humanly possible. I didn't necessarily rush it or anything, or at least I don't feel like I did. But, you know, I really wanted to do a lot of different videos for you guys in terms of like the verses and the comparisons and stuff like that. There's a lot of videos that I want to get to you guys before the end of the year, because next year is going to be massive in terms of Pokemon. So we have a lot of conversations to still have about this game in the future, but we'll have to see what happens. For now, I gotta prep up, because we gotta get ready for the Mega Dimensions DLC, which is probably coming a lot sooner than we think, so we'll have to see what happens. But with that being said, I'm passing the mic over to you guys, because I have said more than enough, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you agree that while not flawless, Pokemon Legends ZA does have something special to offer, something really, really cool, and you found yourself enjoying it or watching it or however you experienced the game? Or are you on the opposing side? This game doesn't really have anything for you, it doesn't look good, and you are not excited at all for the future of Pokemon? Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. And with that, yes, sir, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video real soon. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time.